So I think this headline sort of speaks for itself. Democrats want to kick big investors out of the housing market to improve affordability. Well, we're going to talk about that and more today. And I tell you, this is the start of something. What we're going to talk about on the headline here in the article is not where it's going to end up. And I was afraid this is going to happen sometime soon. So welcome to Housing Bubble 2.0 News of the Week, or as I like to call it, another episode of As the Housing Market Turns. Randy here putting the realism back in real estate. Today is the 13th of December, approaching Christmas. Time is running out. We got to do things before the year is over. Let's get going, guys, right? Anyway, this is kind of important. And as I mentioned, I've actually spoken about this historically regarding what's going to happen with government and housing. And as I've always mentioned, I do try to keep, this channel, apolitical. Like, other words, I don't want to talk politics, but now this is a headline. We're going to talk about it right now. So ultimately, Democrats want to ban hedge funds from buying houses in an effort to improve housing affordability. A bill introduced in the Senate would require hedge funds to sell off all their single-family homes over the next 10 years. It would also prohibit hedge funds from owning any single-family homes. All right, so your first pass at this, you're going to say, oh, well, that makes sense because we want better affordability and we want choice and we want owner occupants to jump in to the marketplace. So altruistically speaking, what a great idea, right? Let's get rid of the big bad investors, etc. But this is just the play, all right? This is the red herring. This is not where it's going to end up. And I'm telling you that whoever the party is in charge, they actually need the hedge funds. So that's why this is a red herring, and we'll see how this will play out over the time. Okay, so basically, lawmakers are seeking to kick investors out. So big investors, not just hedge funds, any large investors. Two bills proposed by the Dems in Congress this week aim to curb home ownership by big investors in an attempt to improve buying conditions for Americans. All right, so in the Senate, the End Hedge Fund Control American Homes Act of 2023 would force big investors to sell off all the single-family homes they own over a period of 10 years and eventually ban hedge funds from owning any single-family homes entirely. So that seems pretty radical if you ask me. The housing in our neighborhood should be homes for people, not profit centers for Wall Street. At every corner of the country, giant financial corporations are buying up housing and driving up both rents and home prices. It's time for Congress to put in place common sense guardrails that ensure all families will have a fair chance to buy or rent a decent home in their community at a price they can afford. All right. So that's the goal, and that's where this is sort of starting off with respect to, the idea of this whole deal here. At the other end of Capitol Hill, Democrats in the House proposed a separate bill that would discourage Wall Street's involvement in the housing market by charging investors who own more than 75 homes an annual fee of $10,000 per home. The money would be pooled into a housing trust fund used to support families with down payments. All right. And also, while the Senate bill has hedge fund entitled, it appears that targeting any large investor, the language defines hedge fund taxpayer as any applicable entity with $50 million or more in net value or assets under management. Indeed, the truly massive institutional buyer of single-family homes in the U.S. have been private equity, with giants like Blackstone and Starwood Capital snapping up a large number of homes in recent years. Okay, so we know what the target is, right? The target is the large hedge funds. Well, no, it's not, and here's the reason why. And yet it's also worth noting that large firms aren't the only entities buying up houses. Small mom-and-pop landlords in previous years have been the major money behind the investor home buying spree. All right, so this is the red herring. The red herring is, let's go after the hedge funds, but in the end, we're also going to target the mom-and-pop landlords. Now, what happened during the pandemic? Okay, we had the foreclosure and eviction moratorium that went on, right? Who pretty much got annihilated during that time frame? It was the mom-and-pop landlords, okay? Oh, guess what? Who owns the most rental property? It's not the hedge funds, even though the hedge funds have purchased a lot of property over the years. If you take a look at this thing, a report from the Department of Housing and Urban Development also notes that institutions accounted for just 3% of all home purchases in 2021. So they're not buying up all the homes, and they don't own all the homes, all right? So there's going to be some statistics that are thrown around that are probably misleading, but the mom-and-pop landlords are the target here, all right? And as much as I said I don't like talking about this because I don't want to, divide people's positions and opinions, stuff like that, but it's reality now. This is the target. So the foreclosure and eviction moratorium targeted the mom and pop landlords, okay? Renters had all the power. Renters get all the benefits, didn't have to do anything, didn't have to help landlords. Landlords still had to pay mortgages, taxes, insurance, upkeep, whatever. There, up until recently, were still counties or locations, cities across the country that still actually had their own local moratoriums on eviction. So landlords are still footing the bill, and that's money they're never going to recover. Okay, so we know how, and all these funds that were created and the dollar values that were there to support landlords and give them money they were losing. A lot of that stuff didn't even happen. Okay, so because I know landlords that applied for stuff that didn't happen, they were denied. The renters had to participate, didn't work out. So let's be clear here, all right? This is a bill that's designed to bring attention to the marketplace, but really that is the group that's being attacked. That's the true target, because the small mom and pop landlords own about 20 million rental units across the country. Okay, so the design, this foreclosure and eviction moratorium, was almost like a test ground to say, hey, if we do something like this and we really put our screws to the mom and pop landlords, what's the fallout going to be? Are they going to lose their property? Are these going to be able to get picked up by hedge funds or go to auction, etc.? You know what I mean? So this really is the start of what I'm going to call socialized housing. Simple as that. So if you take a look, whatever, we can talk about, yes, we know the median price points are up. We know that mortgage rates are up. It's because of the Fed's monetary policy. We know that the supply is tight. We know that there's rate lock going in right now, rate lock effect. So you don't want to leave your 3% mortgage and sell, but have to get a 7 or 8% mortgage when you buy someplace else. So obviously the affordability crisis has been exacerbated in recent years by an increasing number of large investors purchasing a significant percentage of single-family homes and squeezing out prospective buyers. Okay, yeah, but I mean, here's the deal. When you take a look at the numbers, a lot of these homes were purchased by the hedge funds back in the day, okay, with respect to what I would call not even like via the foreclosure auction process, number one, and two, what we call non-performing asset or non-performing loan transfers. So we have to take a look at the market. So historically, since the last housing crisis, the recovery of the market was due to market manipulation. What I mean by that is homes came on the marketplace, right? And people could buy them cheap after they were foreclosed on. Then that kind of stopped happening because it was easier for the lenders and more cost effective to say, you know what, instead of selling one home to one buyer and having to pay maintenance costs and taxes, insurance, and sell, closing costs, and guess what? We got to pay the realtor, their commission, etc. All those things, the liability that goes into it. Instead of selling houses off at one-offs, why don't we just sell whole pools of them in multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar transactions to what? Real estate investment trusts, hedge funds, or whatever. So, you know what? When you take a look at this, the government was okay with doing this back in the day, all right? They were okay with doing this back in the day because it was a quicker way to essentially get the market controlled. So those homes never came on the market to keep prices low. They were taken away from going in the open market, which means there was no supply, and our recovery was based on a limited supply and quantitative easy. So that's why I kind of laughed, going, okay, they play this, but they still want to go after the mom and pop investors. You see, so mom and pop investors who have the 20 million plus rental properties provide accommodation for a lot of people who would not be buyers anyway. All right, so they're going after the hedge funds as the starting point. The government needs the hedge funds because the hedge funds can bankroll this. Okay, the government would like socialized housing. So ultimately, in the end, if the hedge funds own the homes and then they work with the government to do things like Section 8 or expand, cost-effective rental, whatever, they're going to get their dollar values, they're going to get their margins, they're going to get their points on in returns for the clients, and now the government's provided people with affordable accommodation. So that's really what's going on here. So don't let this whole let's go after the big investors think this is a savior for real estate, because it's not. The bill is unlikely to pass in a divided Congress, but lawmakers have insisted the conversation needs to be started. Very key, very, very key statement there, okay? Because you're not going to go to a Blackstone or American Home for Rent or Starwood, all the groups that own a lot of houses. And again, when you take a look at what's a lot of houses, if they own hundreds of thousands of houses, that's not 50 million houses that are out there across the country, right? So it's still a small percentage point. But they're going to have a conversation, which means now we're going to say, well, we'll carve out special rules and incentives and opportunities for the big hedge funds, because quite frankly, you're not going to shut down that element of Wall Street. All right, it's just not going to happen. But it gets us all excited. It gets the layperson excited about, oh, I'm going to have affordable housing. Like, yeah, let's go, punish big business and the money people and the whole bit. That's where this is headed. In the end, what they want to do is make life difficult for mom and pop investors, take their homes back, let the hedge funds buy them, and work out some relationship or some routine where, hey, hedge funds are bankrolling, the government's involved, government's providing homes to accommodation to people who need them, etc. It's affordable, etc. It's controlled. We're taking money out of your bank account, going right to the hedge funds. I mean, you can see where this is actually going. They've started this with the eviction moratorium and playing around with that. A lot of larger cities have rent control and things that are going on that make landlording very difficult. All right, and some states have already started off with changing some of the foreclosure laws where they are punishing investors for buying those homes, yet they are, and they're encouraging owner occupancy, but it's not really done, I'll say in a fair way. I don't want to get into it here. I've talked about it in videos before, but you know what I mean? You can already see that they're building the groundwork for things to happen in the future. So that's the part. For its part, the investor community has said lack of new housing supply is the problem, and the policy should be focused on development. I do agree with some of that. Also just moving property. I mean, there's a lot of things that the Fed is doing right now that they think they're helping people and they're actually not. All right. So there's a lot of things that have to happen to make things more affordable and more available. But basically removing the whole, large buyer is not going to work. I think, again, the red herring there, because the hedge funds will be necessary to keep this going or helping to bankroll all this. The joke about, having $10,000 per year if you own over 7,500 homes, you got to pay the government. Well, guess what? On average, that's what you're making. Okay, that's like, okay, they're making $10,000 per year after cost of financing, insurance, maintenance, taxes, whatever. You're netting $10,000, but roughly $1,000. If you're netting $1,000 a month, you're doing pretty good on a cash flow basis. Well, is that money going to now just go to the government? So why would you do that, right? Disincentive to actually do the business. So you can see how it's getting kind of played here. So realize that, as I said, this is not the target. The target is the mom and pop side, and this is the start of something that's not going to be that great for a lot of people, but we have to be aware of this. Folks, if you enjoy the information I provide, please do me the great honor and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate that. And if you are a subscriber, please hit that, just resubscribe again and do the bell notification, because I'm losing subscribers all the time. I've been maintaining my plateau for the past couple of years. Don't ask me why. Well, I know why, but we don't talk about it here, obviously, right? Because that's how YouTube works. So, funny enough, Grant Cardone, I'm sure if you're looking at real estate, you've heard of the guy named Grant Cardone, just came out and said America will become a renter nation. Exactly. So this kind of dovetails with what's going on. And so that's the thing. He warns the U.S. could see 100-year mortgages. We might even rent our clothes, how to buy real estate without going in debt, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously, the interesting thing here is that with elevated interest rates and high home prices, American home buyers have felt firsthand the squeeze on their budgets. Well, of course, according to Grant Cardone, the necessity for substantially longer mortgage terms on the horizon. What's that going to do? It's going to basically increase the interest you're going to pay dramatically, but it's going to make your monthly payments shrink. Right, that's the whole idea. So as we know, it's not necessarily about what you're paying and what the price is. It's about what your, sort of like what your interest total is over the course of your mortgage. It's about your monthly payment, right? So that's the big thing here. So the savior America will not be lower prices. It'll be longer mortgages. In your lifetime, you will see mortgages go from 30 to 40, 50, and maybe even 60 years. You could, if you live long enough, see a 100-year mortgage in America. All right. So the whole point is that people need to get into houses and they can't do it now. So we just change the dynamics of a mortgage to make it affordable, right? So I look at it going, if you can't afford it now, how are you going to, will this really help? Who knows? We've seen FHA do some of this with some of their distressed properties, redoing your mortgage or coming out of forbearance. They're putting the stuff you missed in the back end and giving you now a 40-year mortgage term. Okay, so is that actually addressing the problem of affordability? I'm not too sure. It's just deferring what you owe and putting it out over the course of 10 more years. If you've had financial problems to begin with, whether you have a 30-year or 40-year mortgage, you're still going to have those problems. It's not going to make much of a difference as far as I'm concerned. But the point is, that's what's happening right now. Again, and as he put it, a mortgage is just a fancy way to say you own some shite that you don't actually own. Because true, right? We own the house in title, but until it's paid off, we don't really own it, so to speak, right? Just basically, he's saying significant shifts in lifestyle and consumption patterns. He sees a future where renting becomes the norm across various aspects of life. America will become a renter nation. You'll rent your cars, rent where you live, might even rent your clothes in the future. So who knows about that? But the point he's trying to make here is that, and this is funny because I was actually going to do an article about discussion about this first, and I was like, oh, wait a second, that was the stuff that happened in Congress or the Senate, regarding the hedge funds. I thought I needed to, so the two tie in very nicely. So that's the scoop that we're looking at here. So yes, there's a starting point. Now, will this get pushed back? Of course. When you've got the massive hedge funds that have all these assets and stuff, they're not going to go for this. And you know what? Again, lobbying, this and that, like it ain't going to happen, right? They're not going to get hurt. What they're going to do is they're going to work out some concession with the government to do certain things for certain groups and certain people. And that's going to be good enough. And then the government's going to put their sights back onto where it was in the trial run with the foreclosure and eviction moratorium, because that's where the volume of rental units are, and that's what they want to get their hands on. No question about it. It's very obvious. If you don't see it, open your eyes, because this is what's going to happen, or this is what they want to have happen. And we actually have to stand up for what we believe in and sort of fight to like, this is capitalism, this is American enterprise, right? So, why do people come here? They come here to do this, to earn, learn, and make something of themselves and to be financially free. And this way we're not, if we're being controlled from a property perspective here. So there will always be a need for rental accommodation because the segment of the population always needs to rent. But you know what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, okay, if that's always going to be there, or if it's going to increase, we want a piece of the action. And they want to basically take out, the small investor mom and pop. Simple as that. That's how I see it. And I've already, again, as I said, I've already seen the groundwork happen in a couple of states to lay the groundwork. Every time there's a discussion or a bill, they're not going to get 100% of what they're asking for, but they're asking for such a gross amount or gross or out of control idea and fantasy that when you concede, they're getting a little bit more each time, you see. So it's a whole play here. And so, I'm not worried, but I know that they're just starting this process. Okay, so we got to look out in the future. And FYI, I've actually been involved in some housing lobbying stuff back in the day. So I kind of see how that kind of goes. And, there's ways to fight this, but I can also see how it works on the opposite side as well, too. In summary, okay, you want to own a property? Well, you know what? If you're worried about the big guys, buying properties you don't get your hands on, I can tell you where the big guys don't go to buy properties, okay, is a lot of niches out there, and no one's focusing on them, and this is your opportunity. You don't want to miss out on that. I keep telling everybody this, right? I'm looking for, and I can show people on this, investor buyers, cash buyers who need SFRs, single-family residential homes, private funding partners for all of our projects, recruiting more real estate agents to come here, and because I can't make all the calls. We have so many leads we can't get to. I'm not kidding you. Joint venture partners, bring me your deals that are facing foreclosure, have probate issues, or distress, because we can mess with that. Bring distressed deals, all right? So what do we look at? We look at things, the foreclosure auction. We look at bank-owned, real estate owned, short sale, short payoff, subject to homeowner association foreclosures, and the list goes on there. I don't want to keep going over this, but this is what we look at. This is what I can teach and train on. Very, very important. Okay, we're kicking off a big focus on this in the new year, so you want to get involved now. There's a lot of new ways you can do things. I added novations, retail buying, and code violations because I forgot to add those before, and we're seeing some of those right now. So this is what goes on in the marketplace. This is where things are happening. But mark my words, everyone was asking the past couple of days at this, I work at this collab environment here in the Tampa area. Everyone was asking me about that. And I basically, said, hey, listen to it, read it. It's not going to play out that way. And the article said so, right? This is just a starting point. This is a discussion. They know full well that this is not going to pass through the Senate, and there's going to be major pushback, but they're tabling things for the future that there'll be opportunities, concessions, whatever that they'll get their hands on and they'll want. So we have to be prepared to push back on things like that. Anyway, folks, I appreciate the views, the likes, and the comments. Please share the video with your family and friends. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Reach out to me to talk about this stuff. I look forward to speaking with you real soon.